my great-uncle, Major Edward Conolly, Uncle Ted as we called him, was the owner of this house. And Uncle Ted, in 1938, he handed over Castletown to his eldest nephew, which was my father. And my father's name then was William Francis Carew, the 6th Baron Carew. But it was agreed, and the understanding was that Conolly would be added to the name because Castletown, being a Conolly house, was given to my father. So we took on the name Conolly, and my father then became William Francis Conolly-Carew, 6th Baron Carew.
My father, our father, enthused me with the history of Castletown and general Irish history. He was always reading Irish history. He knew all the family stories. And I used to be the one who'd sit on the floor in his study and listen to these stories. I was fascinated. And I used to go up into the attic. He let me up in the attic and gave me the key. And up there were all the stories from Lady Louisa Conolly, all the letters, all the old account books. I loved it, and I used to collate all that. I would have written something about Castletown, but I never had the opportunity really. And Diana came one day and stayed and saw a manuscript of mine or something else. And she said, why don't we do one of Castletown? So we cooked it up together.
There were three main people. Murphy the butler, with an extraordinary story of his life, which is in the book. Carpenter, Bob Smith, an amazing man. And thirdly, Johnny O'Neill. His family have been gardeners here for more than 300 years.
One of the reasons for me doing the book is to try and people the house, so people can understand what was going on in these walls. You know, it's not just a museum.
I'd known for several years that there was big financial problems in the upkeep of the place. It was enormous. And in the very early 60s, I remember my father, he consulted all the family. I remember him talking to me privately and said, look, the house needs rewiring, it needs a new roof, and it's going to cost about £150,000, which was a lot of money then in the 1960s, early 60s. I think we've got to sell. What did I think? And I said, well, Dad, great sadness, but no. Absolutely right. It has to happen. We don't, you know, he didn't want to break the place up into portions. So very sadly, the house was sold. But my father did the right thing, sadly, but he had to.
When we were children, we could hear this farm bell ringing, and it would go in the morning for the men to come to work, 8 o'clock. That would be the bell for us to get up here too. And then it would ring at lunchtime for them to go home on their bikes, lunchtime, after lunch to come back, and then again in the evening. And the whole village heard this bell. It rang out forever. And we just became used to it, and nobody thought any more of it. My father never knew what the bell meant. My father didn't, and he was steeped in the history. And it's turned out that this bell was the bell tower of the secret castle, which is there. And when Speaker Conolly built this house originally, 1722, when he built it, it was so aesthetically beautiful that he tried to cover up this ruin of a castle. And he planted trees all round it, and ivy grew all over, and everyone forgot it. So it's forgotten. And it has the most extraordinary romantic history of its own, which is desperately important to America.
This is where, when there were formal dinner parties, people came in here, ambassadors and people. This is where they met and had a drink and then filed across to the dining room. Instead of going to school, to the local school, Pat went to the local school and then went to England. Cruelly, at 8, they bumped off to stay. And Sally and I, from the age of about 5, and Bunny starting, we had a lady who lived in the house and taught us. And we were taught as if we were at school. So we were taught further down the corridor there in the little. And we ate with her, and we had lessons, and we had music. And then when we were a little bit older, there was a girl who lived with a family who took us pony riding.
It was saved by Desmond Guinness, who absolutely saved it. And then the Castletown Foundation took it over for many years, which I'm part of. And of course then the state, it's in the ownership state, and I have nothing but the highest praise for the way the state, with the OPW doing the job for them. It's absolutely fantastic, and I'm privileged to sit on the Castletown Foundation with Professor Nolan as chairman, and we meet about every 6 weeks and we have a wonderful relationship with the OPW in running this great house, and we advise them on the upkeep of the place.
We all love the story of the devil, which everyone knows. The devil came to dinner. Not every house has a devil who came to dinner. The IRA threatened to assassinate us all. It was all written over the front door. There were some wonderful stories.